Today, we'll be exploring the reasons behind psychotherapists' high burnout rate.
As therapists, we have a really, really high burnout rate because we undervalue ourselves.
The loneliness associated with starting a business.
Starting off in private practice can be quite a lonely place, and you need to have a support system there in order to kind of throw out questions. And
How to run the business of a psychotherapist.
so I'm very upfront with people and saying that, you need to build your network online and offline,
Yeah.
and building up your organic growth through social media, through a good website and things like that before you spend money on paid ads, because you can lose a lot of money pretty quickly.
The theme for this season is Embracing Life's Tapestry, and my guest is Sinead Kennedy. So you mentioned there about the fact that you had an interest in mental health,
Yeah.
throughout most of your youth. What was the cause of that?
Well, I suppose myself, I suffered with anxiety, like high anxiety. And I suppose from kind of my teenage years, maybe, and didn't really understand maybe what it was, and kind of looked at other avenues like mindfulness, and um, saw how that kind of helped me. But I think that there was, I suppose, from my own experience and knowing that I felt a little bit lost in it all, um, wanting to kind of help people who feel the same, I suppose, or that, not, feeling maybe anxiety or depression, but not really knowing where to turn. And that can be a really kind of lonely place. So, yeah, I think that. And I suppose when I was a teenager as well, my parents separated, and my stepdad came into my life, and kind of having all of that change while going through the change of being a teenager as well was quite a lot, I suppose. And so in my own practice as a psychotherapist, I work a lot with young people and teenagers as well, and family dynamics. I suppose a lot of the time, we want to help people because of our own pain and because of what we've been through ourselves. So that was definitely my story anyway.
And in terms of that, of the anxiety you mentioned there a minute ago, what was the source of that? Was that from within your home, or was it something because you were picked on in school by your friends in school?
Yeah, no, I think it was maybe more so kind of within, and not being able to maybe communicate what was going on inside. So I suppose if you looked at me from an outside perspective, I had a lot of friends. You know, I wasn't, I suppose, necessarily looked like a lonely person, but sometimes I felt quite lonely, and yeah, and felt a lot of anxiety and didn't really know how to cope with that sometimes. Um, so I think it was a lot to do with more so how I felt about myself, um, which sometimes as a teenager, because of the way that, our minds are as a teenager and our brains are developing, it's very difficult to think in the way that we do as an adult. So I think, having kind of moved through that, I learned a lot about myself. But I think maybe if I had um, got more help, maybe not from parents or anything, but maybe, had a bit more kind of education around mental health and that as a teenager, it probably would have helped, because sometimes you feel like you're the only one that's going through that.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. It can be a very lonely experience for a lot of teenagers when they're going through, development stage in life from childhood to adulthood. I know what you're saying there, and it's quite confusing for a lot of people. And they need somebody they can trust and they can speak to in confidence. And if you don't have that, then the whole area of teenage years can be quite difficult for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of, you talked about there a minute ago about the fact that your parents separated and then your stepdad came into the home. How did that impact you as a person, having seen your father leave the home and then your stepdad coming into the house? And was he a positive influence on your life?
Yeah, so they're two, I suppose, very, even though they happened, not too long away from each other, not too far away from each other, they're two very separate things, I think. For me, although, it's a disruption, I suppose, to the family kind of dynamic, for me, there was some relief in my parents splitting up because I don't think it was the healthiest of relationships. And so, and that's, I think, what's interesting when I think about my own work with families and that, because I suppose a lot of people stay together for their children when sometimes perhaps their children would actually like for them to break up,
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, there was actually some relief in that as well. And obviously, it was sad and it was change, and you're going from having kind of one home to two homes and all of that. But in terms of my stepdad coming into my life, he was a really positive influence, and we're still very, very close. And I have since kind of relocated to the south of Spain, and my mum and my stepdad live around the corner from me. So, so yeah, we're very, very close.
Oh, very good.
Mm.
You also mentioned there at the start of the conversation that you've had an interest in, mental health since you were a teenager. What lit the flame within you to become a psychotherapist? And what's the route to becoming a psychotherapist? That's two questions for you in one.
Yeah. I suppose there was a few things, as I said, kind of my own work on my own mental health, and understanding it from a kind of inside, somebody who has struggled with their mental health. So that I also I grew up living next door to somebody who is a close family friend who fostered children growing up, and I think seeing, I suppose, that, and I suppose that kind of lit a fire in me that I wanted to help people from a very young age. That was always something I kind of wanted to do as a career, but not really sure where exactly to go with it. And then I did some volunteer work with Teen Line Ireland, and that it was, it's a listening service for teenagers across Ireland. And I felt a little like I really enjoyed doing the volunteer work, but felt like there was more maybe that I would like to be able to offer people. And so there was actually somebody within the service that was trained as a psychotherapist, and we started talking about it, and that's kind of how I got on to that. And then once I kind of got in to do the course or started it, I was just like, this is something that I just was born to do. Like I really, really enjoy the work. It's so diverse, and it's just such a privilege to work with some of, with the clients and see people change their life.
And is it a 2 or 3 or 4 year program you have to do to become a psychotherapist? Because I'm completely unaware of what's involved in this situation. So
Yeah. So psychotherapy isn't regulated in Ireland, unfortunately. They are working towards regulation. So it's basically you need a diploma. But however, most of the courses in Ireland now are at least a degree course. So when I did it, it was 3 years, but I think now it's 4, depending on where you do it. And then obviously you can go on and do masters as well. I think because we're not regulated, there's a lot of talk about whether you be called a counsellor or a psychotherapist, depending on your qualifications. So it's kind of saying that you might only be called a psychotherapist if you have a master's degree, and a counsellor if you have less than that. But regulation has been taking a long time to come into fruition, so we'll see what happens.
And would this be government legislation, or would it be psychotherapists themselves, regulating their own work, for example?
No. So we have like accreditation bodies, like the Irish Association of Counsellors and Psychotherapists, or IHIP as well. So they kind of would have certain criteria that you need to meet in order to be part of their association. However, with regulation, this would be government regulation, which would be great for the mental health sphere in general, I think, because it will give a standard of training for therapists. And it would also be, I think psychotherapy can be expensive for people, but part of that is because, psychotherapists have to charge VAT on their services. We're the only kind of mental health people that have to charge that, and therefore it makes our services more expensive. And I think it would make it a lot more accessible for people if regulation would come in. But
Very good. On a more positive note, what inspires you to be successful in life?
Well, I think, especially with this career, you don't go into it necessarily for the money. Okay. So I think what makes me successful is seeing the change that the work of therapy can bring to people's lives. So that is my main, focus. And that's the reward, I suppose, that I get from this work. So that's kind of what keeps me going, even in the harder days, I think.
You mentioned also that within your psychotherapy practice, you concentrate on children and family relationships. Are you continuing to practice as a psychotherapist in addition to doing your coaching business?
Yeah. So I don't work with kids. I work with like teenagers and adults, and then obviously with teenagers, you work with the family as well and work with parents. And psychotherapy is definitely something that is always going to be part of my work, but I do coaching as well. So I don't think I'm ready or want to give that side of my work up anytime soon.
Very good. And you know that you're working as a coach to counselors and psychotherapists who want to set up their own business.
Mm.
Where did that idea come from? And when did you start this particular business?
So this business only started October of last year, actually. So I am a little bit unusual in that when I trained, I went straight into private practice. So a lot of therapists would usually work for organizations, and I never really wanted to do that. I always wanted to kind of have my own practice. And so I think I went through a lot of the ups and downs of running your own practice and made a lot of mistakes. And I suppose, with the therapists that were in my own network anyway, they were kind of asking me, for advice on things. And I thought, well, I think a lot of people maybe would like to move into private practice, but are scared or maybe don't have a clear plan about how they can do that. Or perhaps they're not, well, what I hear therapists say sometimes is I'm not like business minded and so I think, when I worked in the fitness industry before, I suppose I had a sales background. So when I was kind of starting out, I was kind of merging, I suppose, the two together. And I think where a lot of therapists find it scary is the kind of marketing part of running your own business, and having to, track all your finances and do all of that kind of stuff. So I suppose with starting up the business, I wanted to take that fear away from people, because there's so much reward in running your own business and having your own practice and more freedom, I think, that comes with that.
I've noticed there that you're pretty busy on Instagram with posts.
Yes.
It's on to you. You're getting yourself out there and getting your name out there and developing your business. But I know what you're saying there that people can go into a business with open eyes, uh, but they often lack that business concept. They have a great idea, but seeing it through can be difficult for people, and
Yeah.
they hope to get customers quicker than they actually get them. And then when they
Mm.
don't get the customers too soon, they start panicking. So what you're saying there, you have to be comfortable with putting your own money into a business to get it started, to get your
Mm.
name out there. And you have to take on clients who might not pay you top rate initially, but by
Mm.
doing so, you're taking that work, you're building up your credibility as a psychotherapist. Uh,
Yeah.
but you have to get out there, network, get out there and market yourself and your services, get people to know you. You have to be busy on social media so that when people are looking at social media, they might be lurking in the background for a couple of years, looking at what you're posting before they actually make contact with you and
Yeah.
engage you as a client, as a client. Yeah. I know what you're saying there. It takes a lot of gumption and self-belief to go out there and start your own practice as a psychotherapist, as against going into an existing practice or working in an organization that supports mental health overall. So, yeah. What about,
Yeah. I think, I suppose just on that, I think that's why with the coaching program that I run, it's a group coaching program, because I think starting off in private practice can be quite a lonely place, and you need to have a support system there in order to kind of throw out questions and that you don't feel so alone, I suppose. And so and also I think working with somebody who really understands what it's like to be a psychotherapist, and I suppose some of the maybe ethical considerations that we have to have in our business as well, and how we promote and market ourselves. If you don't know what it's like being a psychotherapist, that can be kind of a challenge. So I think having a coach or having somebody that really understands it from the inside out can be really beneficial.
yeah. And would you get, potential clients coming to you for your coaching business saying to you, do I need professional indemnity insurance? Do I need public liability insurance, for example, just to take that example? Uh,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So, I mean, in that retrospect, most of the colleges, because therapists would have to do a certain amount of placement hours before they qualify. So they would have to have insurance in place most of the time anyway. And the colleges are good in that way of kind of setting people up, that giving them a kind of basic knowledge of what they will need.
yeah,
However, on the business side of things, that can lack a little.
yeah. And also the whole area of cash flow, because, for example, if a psychotherapist decides I'm going to go out into private practice and I'm going to rent a room in a building in wherever, Dublin, Cork, Limerick. First of all, before you get any client, you're paying off rent maybe a quarter in advance to the landlord. That's
Yeah.
cash flow out the door. So you need to start finding clients to replace that cash flow coming in. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. And that's the thing. So we, again, I suppose in the course we kind of start from the very, very basics of like having a kind of business plan and setting your fee correctly, and accounting for all of the things that come up when you are a private practice
yeah,
practitioner, and being able to kind of forecast, year on year. These are all things that therapists are not taught when in our training.
yeah.
So,
Yeah. They
yeah.
need the business skills. That's what they need, really, I suppose, what you're saying. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
Yeah, along with a business kind of mindset as
yeah,
well, because we can kind of, even though, as therapists, we know a lot about mental health, we also can get in our own way sometimes
yeah,
with imposter syndrome and, maybe feeling like because we're in a helping role that we're not entitled to earn a good living. And that's a kind of underlying kind of like mantra or something, I suppose, that's kind of around when it comes to therapists, like we don't deserve to earn a good living because we're in a mental health or we're in a helping field, when I think that's a load of rubbish.
You're making a very good point there, actually, Sinead, because the same can be said of anybody who's setting a business up. And initially, people might decide, I'm going to lower my rate to get some clients. Now, there are pros and cons to doing that. The con is word gets around that, oh, Sinead or John, they charge €100 an hour. You should be charging 200 or 300 euro an hour. And if you start doing that and word gets around, it's very hard to increase your rate. So what you're making there is a very good, valid point. Make sure you know what your value is and be prepared to charge at that value, and only discount your services if somebody comes to you with a genuine case. Otherwise, you're doing yourself a great disservice and you're just giving away all your knowledge for nothing in return by discounting your fee for the sake of taking on clients. Yeah.
Exactly. And I mean, as therapists, we have a really, really high burnout rate because we undervalue ourselves. And so you're not actually, you might think that you're doing, you know, a good deed, I suppose, by lowering your rate, but actually it's not going to be good for you or your clients either. You know, if you're seeing kind of 7, 8 clients in a day, what about the 8th client? How much of them, how much of you are you able to give to that client? You know, so yeah.
It's better to have maybe 3 or 4 clients a day who you can really help genuinely. And it's a win-win situation for the psychotherapist and the client. You don't want the psychotherapist feeling overwhelmed when they have 8 clients a day. And when the 6 have come and gone, the 7th and 8th client come into the room, then eventually you say to yourself, oh gosh, here I go again, because you're just under pressure. You're just lethargic, tired, overwhelmed, you know. Yeah. And also, do you find with clients coming into your coaching program, they might decide, oh, I'm going to rush into doing paid ads on Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn before they've actually, you know, built their customer pipeline. The paid ads comes at the very end when you want your potential clients to open their wallet or purse to you. Do you find that you have prospects coming into your course who are too willing too soon to invest in paid ads, and it backfires in them?
Yeah, and I was one of them. I think so. I'm very upfront with people and saying that, you need to build your network online and offline, and I think a referral network for therapists anyway is like one of your strongest lead sources, really. And building up your organic growth through social media, through a good website and things like that before you spend money on paid ads, because you can lose a lot of money pretty quickly.
Yeah. And you end up with the wrong type of people, approaching you, inquiring about your services. Yeah. And it's self-defeating. It's demoralizing, to say the least. It's been a very interesting conversation. So I've got one more question for you today, Sinead. If the opportunity came your way to have one single request granted without question, what would that be in your life?
Oh my God. That's a big question. Oh God. One single request granted. This might sound a little deep, but I think my grandmother on my mother's side, she passed away when my mum was only 13 and I never met her. So maybe to get the opportunity to meet her would be quite nice.
Well done.
Yeah. I suppose when parts of your family, you've heard so much about them, but you've never met them. And I think that would be nice.